Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. So today I've got this very cute picture of two little baby goats playing. So I'm going to actually try and draw both of them and have them so they're running along together having a great old play. It just looks so cute and I couldn't resist. So we shall see how we go, because I actually haven't drawn baby goats before. So they're extremely cute little dudes. So I'm just going to start by doing the outline of one of them. They've got huge ears. And they've got very big eyes. He's got a beautiful big white patch on his forehead, so I'll just mark that in. And he's got, his eyes are sort of tear shaped like that. He's got his little, I'm going to zoom in this a little bit so you can see it a bit better. There we go. Because they're quite little. So now his head and his neck are the same length. So I'm going to use his head as a measurement for the length of his body, the depth of his body. And his head is 2 times his body, so 1, 2. So his body will come to about there. His little back's curled up because he's in a cantering position, or he's galloping. So there we go. Again, use his head as a measurement. So his belly will be about that, the same depth as his head. And now his legs are 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. So his legs go to about there. So his legs are the 2 times the length of his head. He's got a little roughed up, he's all furry. He's got very furry, so I've got to do his furry bits in. I'll make his fur roughed up as I go when I'm painting him. I'll just get to draw his shape in first. And he's got little hooves like that. And he's got a brown patch that comes up there. He's got his back sort of really fluffy, so I'll just draw the fluffy bits in. Now his head and the top part of his leg is the same length, so about there, and that'll be the same as the bottom part of his leg. Okay, so that's how you keep them sort of in proportion. I use animals' heads as the marker, as the gauge to where things need to be. For proportions wise. It's the same with humans actually. Humans are the same. You measure their heads against other parts of their body to get their proportions, and then everything looks like everything looks correct. Okay, he's got his little leg comes up here like that, and it goes behind this other leg. So head 1 and 2, so we've got just about the right length, like that. So that's one little goat galloping. Then he's got his little mate behind him, who I'm going to do a little bit closer. It doesn't matter if he pops off the page a little bit. So I'm going to do their heads, try and do their heads about the same length, like that. And he's got his ears go off to the side. Excuse me. And his other ears like that. And he's sort of jumping in the air. He's sort of jumping in the air, so I'm going to do his little eye. They've got the cutest little eyes. They've got tear shaped. I've got to do that one's eyes a little bit bigger too. And his little nostrils that go around the side there like that. Okay, so now his head is so I've already got his neck too deep, so I've got to adjust that to one head's width. So head, neck, yep. And then same for his body. His body's one head. So go there, mark it there. And he's sort of disappearing off the page, this little one. And I'll draw his little front legs coming down here about the same length as the front one, as this goat's. So it's 1, 1, 2. I could probably do it a little bit longer, but that's okay. And that front leg comes back there because he's running forward. So I've got to get the feeling of momentum like that. And then he disappears off the page because he's cantering, which is like running. I'll do his little markings on him. And I got this reference picture off unsplash.com, which is a royalty-free reference site, because they have lots of great pictures that you can use for your artwork as references. Okay, so he's got brown there. This one's a black and tan one. He's got a little bit of white on his legs. And this one is brown and white. So he's got patches here. He's got a part brown leg there. He's got brown legs there. I'll rough up the fur on his belly so he looks like he's a bit furrier than I've got him. Alright, that's the two little goats running, having a play, looking very cute. So I am now going to start to add colour. And I'm just going to do these quite simply. I'm not going to fuss too much. I'm going to add, I'm going to clean my palette. You can see, well, you can't see it off to the side, but I can see it off to the side. So I clean my palette and get all of that excess paint off there, because I'm going to use tan natural colours for these guys. So I'm going to go in with a bit of Venetian red, and I'll dilute that down for this first little guy, because he's a browny colour, a reddy brown. We call it chestnut, like it's like horse colours chestnut. And he is that kind of colour. So I'm just going to block it in first, very simply. He's darker on his nose. He's got a white patch on his head, which I'm going to leave the white of the paper. He's got a very dark muzzle, but I can go over this colour with that later. With darker colours, I can build up the layers as I go. I'll take that all the way to his shoulders. That leg is completely brown. I will do a background on this, I think. I wasn't going to, but I think I will, because gonna need some contrast for the white on his little body, because he's got a white leg. He's got a little bit of brown on his foot there. Grab some more of my Venetian red. He's got patches going down his back, onto his leg, down here, and then down to his hoof down there. And on this leg he's got brown onto his hoof like that. So that's pretty much his colour. I'm going to go this other one. I'm going to do this little goat that's the background here. He's actually almost black and tan, so I'm going to just do the tan parts with this, or black and brown. I'm going to use the brown parts with this red, and everywhere else I will go over with the darker tone. And I'll use burnt umber and ultramarine blue for the darker tones on him. And then he's actually got a white back as well. He's got white knees. He's got tan bottoms of his legs. And he's got... Okay, so now I've got to get a bit... I'm going to use transparent brown oxide. So I'll get that up here. That's a reddy brown as well, but it's a slightly more golden brown. And I'm going to start to build up colours on these little goats. I can add this colour onto his ears, coming down onto his little face. And I'm going to let that flow around, because you can see the paper's still a little bit damp, just a little bit. I'm going to drag that out with my brush a little bit. I've got to darken up under here. I can actually go in afterwards with a very fine brush and add fur texture, which I will do. Now I'm going to wet my brush, drag that down because I want it paler, more pale there. He's got a little dark in front of his knee, so I'll do that stronger, and then I'll just wet my brush and drag it up, and that'll make that top part a little bit more pale. He's actually got a bit of brown on his belly too, so I'll add that in. Alright. Now onto this little one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this same brown oxide and take it around here. And I'll add the fur cut texture after. So wet my brush, drag that pigment around, so that'll make where I initially put it darker, and where I will add the water it will be a bit more pale. Come down there onto his little hoof. Okay, now he's actually got quite dark, so I am going to use, he's got quite dark on his body, so I'm going to use ultramarine blue, which I'm mixing up on the side here. You can't see that, I've got to get a camera for my paints, and burnt umber. So ultramarine blue, burnt umber makes a tan colour, a dark, almost black colour, sorry. As you can see, so that's what it does, that's the colour it makes. And it's still a little bit damp, but I don't mind if that flows into that light brown colour, because their fur does overlap, and it does make it that. I've got to come around his eye anyway, so I'll let that flow in there like that. I've lost the shape of that ear, but I can add that in after. I'll define that with some stronger pigment. I'll come down his back, add this fur here. These are the cutest little dudes, and I thought they'd be fun. I love cows and I love goats. I think they're the cutest little critters. And I'm a farm girl. I live on a farm, so I always like to draw and paint farm animals. I'll come down onto his hoof, it's darker there. And I don't need to worry about exact details on his hoof. I'm also going to add a little bit of this dark onto this other little goat. He's got it onto his face, a little bit onto his face. And I can use a bit of micron pen to help add detail when I want to. Like if I want to add a little bit of fur texture, things like that, I can do that. So I am going to add some of this darker tone onto this other little goat. Like that. Okay. Now, what am I going to do here? I am going to add some more texture. I'm going to use transparent brown. So it's more of a brown red. And I'm going to start to add, actually I'm going to get my finer brush, my littler brush, my itty bitty brush. And I'm going to use this transparent brown. And I'm going to add, just with the, whoops, a bit heavy-handed there, start to add some finer sort of fur detail. So he looks a bit more roughed up, because they're quite woolly. They are very, very woolly. And I'll also use blue onto his white parts, white fur, to help with the shading. And he's actually got like a tear line onto his nose, so I'll add that with this brown. And I can add the mouth and the nostrils and that in with a bit of pen. You know, that's easy to do. He's darker around here. Using this brown still, I'll come under his armpit, like there. Anywhere I can see more detail, I'll add a little bit more brush strokes. Right, like that. Come down onto his neck, like that. Alright, that's a bit cute. Now I'll go onto this one, do the same thing. Start to add a little bit of fur texture. Grab my transparent brown again. And I've used that burnt umber cobalt blue to make that grey, but I need to sort of soften that a little bit. It's a little bit too sort of strong and solid looking, so I want to get that a little bit more three-dimensional look. So just add this fur texture on, leaving gaps so you can see between and see the undercolour. And I'm going to add to that brown a bit of a dark blue, and I'm going to make a stronger pigment of that dark to add fur texture to the dark side, the dark colours on this little goat. Now I can find that other ear comes across there like that. So I'll just darken that in like that and do the fur texture, leaving gaps, and come down onto his little nose like that. And I'm just going to keep going with the fur lines using the very tip of my brush. Using the very tip I get the finer marks like that, and I'll do their eyes last because their eyes have got so much expression. They're so cute, and you can see that now gives a little bit more, it just looks a bit more natural, I suppose. They look a bit more in depth. They've got a bit more depth to them, a bit more life to them once you start adding the fur details and things. And now I'm going to do their little eyes. Their little eyes are beautiful and golden tan, so I'm going to use a little bit of yellow ochre. I'm going to grab some yellow ochre and pop that. I've got to get a bit more yellow ochre on my brush because it's not picked up enough. There we go, because I've just got the fine little brush. So pop the yellow ochre, which is a beautiful golden colour. Actually, you know what I could use? I should use quinacridone gold. I might do that. Go the quinacridone, it's more of a yellowy gold. Just for the around the eyes. I can go over the centre bit, the pupil, with the dark over the top, so that's fine. That's not a problem at all. So I just dropped in that light colour and I'll let that dry now. And now on the light parts of the goats, I'm going to use blue for the shadows in the white fur. So I use the blue and I'll just blend that out with a wet brush, so add water to the brush, and anywhere that's in shadow on the white I'm going to use this blue just to help create a little bit more depth. And so I go stronger brush marks where I want it darker, then I clean my brush, wet it, and I drag it out with the damp brush like that. There we go, and I can take that down the leg and that'll take that pigment all around there. I'll add a little bit onto her little head as well, just there, and onto this second little goat, like that. Just to get these shadow tones in onto the belly underneath, like that. I'll add that little bit of blue to the back of the heel on this foot, back of the knee, like that. Now I've got to get the eye in. So I'm going to go right onto the pupil with a very dark purple colour that I have, because the eye's almost dry. Whoops. Just got to very carefully go around the outside edge of the eye. I'm also going to add this very dark pigment in a couple of spots on the nostril, on the little under the little mouth. So I'll do it on a little chin, so it looks like she's got a little mouth like that. Go around the tip of that ear. I can actually add, she's got a little bit of this dark coming around her chest as well, so I better pop that on. I forgot about that bit, and I'm doing that really dark. And onto the shin, I've got to darken up the shin on that little one, coming down to the hoof. And then I'm going to come to the back of this, or the other front leg, He's looking cute. He's definitely looking cute. I've got to soften up the fur line around the eye. I get a little bit more detail onto the face, and I've got to do this little guy's eye. So now I go around the outside of the eye. He's got a little dark line coming down there. And he's got his little nostrils, so I'll mark those in with the darker, with that deep dark blue. Then he's got his little mouth. They've got such cute little dudes. They are such cute little things. And I've got to add his little pupil sort of there. They've got a line. They've got lines for pupils. They don't have like other animals have round pupils. They've got little lines, which you can't really see it in my painting, but it doesn't matter. I was going to darken up the shin and the darker areas that I can see on this little guy here. And he's got darker fur on his little back. Oops, a daisy, excuse my little dog. They're barking at the washing machine. So I come through here, take this down there. Okay, now I'm going to add some background. So I'm going to go, I'll do yellow ochre for the floor. Do yellow ochre because they're running on hay. So I'll just do a rough sort of floor underneath them. So it looks like they're playing on the ground. And I'll just drag that down a little bit just with a wet brush. Just like that. Just like that. I'll take that right down to the bottom. I can add some more yellow ochre on the top. Let that flow around. Keep it looking interesting. Like that. And I might give it like a blue sky background. So I'll go ultramarine blue. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush. And I'm going to carefully cut around these two little baby goats. And baby goats are called kids. So I'll take the water around the kids, being careful not to get it anywhere I don't want it, and that way you'll see when I drop the blue in for the sky background, it'll flow everywhere that I've put the water, which is what I want, and it'll leave the animals the colours that I've already got them. I'll stay away from the ground a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to drop the blue in. And it'll flow everywhere that I've put the water, which is what I want. It's got to keep moving while it's still wet so it flows nicely. Take that all around the back of the little goat, down under the little nose of this one, and everywhere that I've put water. Right, so that'll do that. Now I've got to keep going. I've got to take water everywhere while it's still, whoops, that's gonna run into itself, that's fine. I'll drop some more blue in a minute. So I've got to do the rest of this. I just wanted to get some of it down to show you, and I've got to get it on while the paper's still damp. And this is Archer's watercolor paper. It's a really good quality paper. And it does stay damp. It doesn't absorb the water too quickly. So you have a little bit of time to move paint around. Because the trick to watercolor is your being able to get it to react with the water on the paper and all different consistencies of water. So wet paint on dry paper will create sort of hard edges but a soft colour. Dry paint or wet paint on wet paper will flow like this. Different consistencies of paper and wetness and paint creates different effects on the paper. So come down here, and I keep it quite diluted. Come right down between the legs of this little guy, like that, and under this little guy, like that. So as you can see, then the little goats stand out. Their little white bodies and their little white fairy bits patches stand out. So I'm going to add some more yellow ochre now. I'm going to take it up into the blue a little bit, and that'll make a greeny tone, which is fine because green and paddocks and grass works. So I can actually use that yellow ochre while that paper is still wet. I can take it up, let it blend into that blue in the background a little bit, which is absolutely fine. And I'll add some shadow tones, and you can see when I use the yellow ochre on the dry paper, it gives you harder lines. But it's soft, that softened that whole background a little bit, where it connects to the sky bit, just by, while it's still wet, putting the yellow into the blue, like that. Keeping moving while it's still wet, that'll do. Okay, so now I can do a little bit more detail on these little goats. I'm actually going to get a little bit of white gouache. I want to tidy up this eye a little bit. I need to tidy up the eye on this one little goat. I'm not happy with it. So I'm going to just take his little eye back to white, and I'll let that dry. And the same with this little one. Just going to take the top of his eye back, and I'll put the pupil in a minute. So I just used a little bit of white gouache for that. I'll let that dry. Now I'm going to go and start to add a little bit more finer detail in. So I'm going to grab a bit of my grey, which is burnt umber ultramarine. Add a little bit of fur texture. I'm going to go round this eye again. They've got beautiful little eyelashes, these little guys. They've got amazing little eyelashes. So I've got to add some more dark down under the eye on this one. I've got to add their little hooves. Their little hooves are black, so they've got little cloven hooves. So I'll just literally just mark them in like that, so it just suggests their little hooves. So it just gives the effect that they've got their little hooves like that. So just one little line gap, one little line gap, and then like that. Okay, I'm going to do some shadow underneath them. And I'm going to use a purple tone. So I'm going to use indigo and a touch of magenta to make a purpley colour for the shadows underneath them, because they do have, where they're touching the ground, a little bit of shadow, because their little bodies are creating a shadow. And I'm keeping it simple, I'm not going to too much fuss. There we go, like that. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I've got to get that white back onto that eye. I'm not 100% happy with that eye. So I'm going to take that back to white, let it dry properly. And I'll add some colour into that in a little bit. So that's all goodly. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that reddy brown, transparent brown it is. And I'm going to add some more fur texture onto this little one at the front. Needs a little bit more fur texture. So now I can leave little marks to make it look a bit more furry. I'll add a little bit more under there, onto his little leggies. come down and around this bit around the bottom of his neck. This one's got gorgeous little brown tones on him, browns and greys and all kinds of fun stuff. I'm going to add a little bit more fur texture up here on this one, coming down onto his little back. Got to get a bit more fur in here as well. Alright, now I've got to add the gold back into those eyes, so I'm going to go, I might go a bit of quinacridone gold. Oops, got to get it onto my brush. Actually, I'll use this yellow ochre. Excuse my dog, being very vocal. So I'm going to get that gold back into the eye. Like that. Get that gold back into that eye. Alright, let that dry. I'm going to go around the outside of these with Micron pen. I'm going to use some Micron pen to help me get details. Draw his little nose on. Actually got to get, I have a white marker here. And I'm just going to add a little bit of white. Fuzz up. Just had to add a little touch of white around the nose there. I'm going to add a little bit of white onto the ear too. Just so it highlights that ear a little bit. I'm going to get my Micron pen. I'll have to wait till that's completely dry. I'm going to grab my, I'm going to actually just daub the eye with the bit of material just to help. And I'm going to get a little bit of my grey and take it, there we go, that's better, that looks more like a goat's eye. They've got their little line rather than a round pupil, and I've got to go around the outside of the eye again. Oh, and I've lost it. Okay, that's all right. Got to get some more dark colours underneath these little guys. So I'm going to go a purpley tone just under here, because purple's a great shadow tone. I just want to darken up anywhere I can see that needs to be a bit darker. Just to help to strengthen those darker areas, the shadow areas, so it doesn't all just look flat. That, and he's shadowed under here and under here. I can go over anywhere that I want shadows and the darker with that purple tone. I'm also going to add a bit more fur texture onto this little guy. I'm going to blend it with my brush, so just wet it, damp brush, like that. I'm going to take this blue onto the shadow areas up here, this little guy. Just to help get some texture into their fur. Same on this little one under the belly. Okay. They do look cute. I'm going to grab a Micron pen. Got it mark on their little nose. He's got a highlight on his little nose about there. So I'll mark that on. He's got a highlight on the back of his ear there. Alright, pretty cute. They're pretty cute. I'm going to grab a little bit of gold ochre onto the fur of this little one. I'm going to take this around onto his neck and add a bit of this gold tone into his fur. Like that. I've got to add some darker brown under here while it's still damp, just to help to shape his little face. Like that. It's a bit better. Darken up the top of his ear. Like that. So I'm building up the darker areas of the little face to give them a bit more dimension. And I'm just going to dab that on. Coming down onto the face, like that. Get a bit of transparent brown. Just dot that on, like that. Might even go a little tiny bit of Payne's Grey. Just around that outside edge. Okay, and he's much darker on the outside of his little face as well. So I'll darken up those little parts of him. There we go. And I'm going to go stronger tone down here. Like that. There we go. Alright, he's got a little bit of that dark on there, a little bit of that dark on there. I'm getting it in all the places I need it. I'll get some more shadow colour. So indigo and I'm going to do this shadow colour under here and blend that out like that. Okay, cool. It's a bit of fun. And I'm also going to put a bit of this shadow colour onto the goats, so it helps to make it look unified. So you put a bit of the colour that you use. I just use a little bit of the colour everywhere. I can pick it up off the paper while it's still damp. I'm going to add that into any of the shadow areas on both the goats. Come down onto his little chest. He's got little brown fairy bits there. I come down onto his back of his neck like that. He's got darker fur there. He's got a little bit of darker fur there. So I'll blend that out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to blend that out. I'm going to wet my brush and just drag that shadow colour out, just so it doesn't look like such a hard line, like that. And we're just about done. So I'm quite happy with that. I am going to go around the outside of the eyes with Micron. I'm just going to find a big, thick pen, a big, thick, dark Micron pen. I know I have one here somewhere. An 8, that's what I want. Just to go around the outside of the eyes. Just want to really define the shape of those eyes. Like that. And his little nose and their little mouths. That's about it. So there you have it, 2 little billy goats. So that was lots of fun. I'll just take the outside layer off, like that. So you get a nice crisp clean edge, because that just helps to make it look nice. It sort of frames the picture for you a little bit. There we go. And that is just about that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love it if you click like and subscribe and click on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I release a new video. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Have an awesome day and I'll see you next time. Okie doke. Bye.